Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Yeah, I didn't think they could get off that island on that boat. Hello, and welcome to the GSMC Television Podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Howard Fletcher. I am so glad that you've chosen to be with us today. I have a tremendous show for you, and as if you have not heard that word too much this week, it is tremendous. I will review This Week in TV. I'll explain why theater owners are pissed at the movie Trolls. I'll tell you what shows are premiering in the first half of the month of April. I'll praise make-believe doctors on television. I'm going to review FX's Hulu miniseries Devs. And you know I always end with Westworld. I'm going to recap episode 2 of season 3. But first, here are 2 emails that I forgot to read last show. And so please keep them emails coming at podcasthoward@gmail.com. The first email comes from Tyrion. This is my first email ever on this show. Comes from Tyrion in Westeros. He says, "Dude, you suck. Thanks for wasting my life. I'll see you next week." Thank you, Tyrion. I appreciate that. The second one comes from That Girl 69. And she writes, "I didn't expect much from this podcast when I started to listen, but my brother told me that you're pretty funny, and I would not have continued listening if he had not told me to listen to the whole episode, because the beginning was boring. But halfway through, you had me. When you started talking about HBO's The Outsider, I loved it. I will continue to listen. I just hope that you can make the first half of your show more interesting. I'm looking forward to Westworld too. These violent delights have violent ends. Have a good week." And that's from That Girl 69 in Brooklyn. Thank you, That Girl 69. I'm working on the front end. Hang in there with me. And I'll say that to all of you. This is kind of an acquired taste. Just hang in there. I think you'll like the show. Thank you all for writing. Please, again, my email address is podcasthoward@gmail.com. I will read all the emails on air as long as they're not profane. So let's get started with what's going to happen this week in TV.
Yes.
It would be next to impossible for me to watch everything on television. I say that every show, and it's just the fact. But here are some options that I found that are coming up this week that are some are new and notable, and so that's why I'm sharing them with you. Netflix canceled One Day at a Time in March of 2019 after 3 seasons. The show actually got a lot of fanfare, and so the Pop TV network, it's a cable network. It's on most basic cable packages. They resurrected it to great fanfare. And this show is actually going to be the first streaming to linear to cable save. Much like The Killing. You know, when The Killing got canceled by AMC, Netflix picked it up. And they did that with a couple of other series as well. This is going to be the first one that goes the opposite direction. One Day at a Time was a Netflix show, but now it's going on cable. Kind of neat. Also on cable, Sci-Fi's Vagrant Queen at 10 p.m. That's going to be on Friday. It's based on the comic of the same name. I've never watched it, never read Vagrant Queen, but I know some people who do. I know people who read all kinds of stuff. So, but anyway, it's about a child queen turned galactic scavenger who looks to reclaim her birthright.
Huh?
Now, if this didn't come from a graphic novel, I would say, once again, whoever pitched this thing is fantastic. But I can see this in a graphic novel. Maybe a good show. Returning is a comedy called Tacoma FD. It opens its second season Thursday on True TV. And the news magazine Vice that used to be on HBO is now going to be on Showtime on Sundays at 8 p.m. So Vice is going to start its Showtime run, and I do like Vice quite a lot. I think they do some great stories on Vice on March 29th. On broadcast TV, you have some season finales. You have the season 4 closer to This Is Us at 9 p.m. on Tuesday at NBC. I told you I keep it real. Do not watch This Is Us. And I tell you why I don't watch This Is Us. People told me, oh, I love This Is Us. I cried my eyes out. I don't watch TV to cry my eyes out. I dig that some people do, and I'm glad that there is television for you, but it's just not for me. Anyway, it's a highly rated show, beloved show, and its finale is Tuesday. A day later, on a very different tone, you have the finale of Stumptown, which is also from a graphic novel, which finds Colby Smolder's character's Dex accused of murder. And new, following the This Is Us finale, NBC debuts Council of Dads. It's about a man who has a health scare and assembles a group of his closest friends to help take care of his family should he not be there to do it himself. So if you're not depressed enough after This Is Us, there is another show following it about a man who's terminally ill. And on streaming, new, technically, but not completely, the old Project Runway band is getting back together. Heidi Klum and Tim Gunn reunite for a fashion competition called Making the Cut. And that's going to be on Amazon Prime.
Please, sir.
I did watch Project Runway a couple of years. My ex-wife used to like fashion, so we watched it. I liked Heidi Klum. It was a good show, as those shows go. But I'm glad to see that she got another show because I think there was some hijinks about her losing that title in the other show. Returning, season 3 of Ozark debuts Friday on Netflix. And Martin and Wendy, and that's Jason Bateman and Laura Linney, they're going to a marriage counselor, but they're also up to their shady business that makes the show so good. And in case you missed it, and this is a good one, there is a limited series called Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker. And it's produced and also stars Octavia Spencer. And Madam C.J. Walker, she's the child of former slaves, and she became the wealthiest self-made woman in America in the early 20th century, which is a monumental task for a black person, especially a black woman, in the early 20th century. She made a line of cosmetics, and I think it's a pretty good story about somebody who was very successful fulfilling their American dream. So, and she certainly had a lot of hurdles she had to jump through to get there. Anyway, Octavia Spencer is an outstanding actress, except for the movie Ma, which was, I don't know, hope she made a lot of money off that. I think Hollywood thought that the black horror genre was hot after Get Out, and they threw out some garbage. But hey, Ma's on cable now. Check it out if you have a chance. Okay, next, and I hope you're still with me, That Girl 69 in Brooklyn, because I'm going to talk about this movie Trolls and about the movie theaters being closed down right now, and a beef that the chief of the National Association of Theater Owners has with Universal Pictures and the movie Trolls, which I hope you all remember I spoke about a couple of shows ago, or last show, actually. But I'm trying not to make this a coronavirus show like the last couple have been. We are going to talk about the coronavirus pandemic next segment because it has to do with the theater shutting down and this ridiculous beef this guy has with the movie Trolls. With that, I'm glad you all are here. I hope you all watched Westworld because at the end of the show, I'm going to be going off a little bit on Westworld. So stick around. Go get some tea. You don't have anywhere to go, probably, unless you work at a grocery store, and I'll see you later. Don't go away.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Okay, I am back. All right. As you remember from my last podcast and probably just from watching the news, you know that a lot of theaters shut down. Theater chains closed totally, some indefinitely, some for quite a long time as a result of this coronavirus outbreak. And there was a story on Friday in the Hollywood Reporter by a reporter by the name of Pamela McClintock, and she had an interview with a gentleman named John Fithian. I believe that's Fithian or Fithian. I've never heard his name spoken, but he's the chief of the National Association of Theater Owners. And so I'm going to read a little bit of it because I thought it was pretty interesting, and it kind of dovetailed really closely with what I was talking about on my last broadcast. So here it is. On March 20th, amid unprecedented circumstances resulting from the coronavirus pandemic, new Hollywood movies are suddenly available to buy or purchase on premium video on demand. Historically, a major studio title isn't widely available in the home entertainment space for around 3 months. Some studios have wanted to shrink the theatrical window for years, but theater owners have fiercely opposed such a move. I talked about that last show. Now it is a moot point, considering that virtually all of the 5,400 plus cinemas in the United States have closed amid the coronavirus epidemic, and theaters could stay dark for at least 6 to 12 weeks, upending the 2020 release calendar between release dates and production delays. John Fithian, chief of the National Association of Theater Owners, says that cinema owners have no issue with the current releases moving up their digital release dates, but they are counting on the studios to release their delayed event picks in theaters versus going straight to home entertainment. In an interview this week with the Hollywood Reporter, Fithian didn't mince words when criticizing Universal's decision to release DreamWorks Animation's Troll World Tour on April 10th. We discussed that last show. That was a bomb in Taiwan. Anyway, Universal at the same time is still planning on a major theatrical push for, amongst other movies, Minions: The Rise of Gru, which had been taken off the calendar and is awaiting a new date. That was the introduction. Now, these are the questions and answers between the Hollywood Reporter and this guy, Fithian. Here's the question. A number of studios have announced that current releases in theaters, including Onward and Bloodshot, are being made available immediately on premium video on demand. Aren't you concerned that this will result in a permanent shift in consumer behavior? Here's his answer. No, I'm not, and here's why. For those distributors who already had movies released in theaters that were playing when we had to shut down, we fully understand that they would need to accelerate their home releases. They had already put those movies in cinemas, but cinemas had to shut down. So they made those faster movies to the home to try to monetize those movies and to give people something to watch at home during this crisis. This worked out well in the case of Bloodshot, because nobody was going to see that movie anyway. So here's the next question. Universal is going a step further in announcing that DreamWorks Animation's upcoming April film, Trolls World Tour, will open day and date on premium video on demand and in any theaters around the globe that remain open. Your thoughts? Here's his answer. Trolls World Tour is a very different story. For all the movies that had been scheduled for release during April and May, every other distributor announced delays to later times, but they still intend to release those delayed movies theatrically. Some of those delays have specific new dates, and some have been postponed for unspecified dates. But all of the movies with originally planned release dates in April and May, with one exception of Trolls, will be released later theatrically, with full theatrical windows. All those other studios demonstrated their belief in the theatrical model, that it's still essential to their business. They just had to delay release dates because of the virus. Okay, this is why I brought this whole thing up. Here's the next question. How understanding are theater owners regarding Trolls? Only Universal, and only on Trolls, did one studio skip the theatrical model and go straight to the home. Universal continues to advertise to consumers that Trolls will be released simultaneously to theaters and the home on April 10th. They are lying to consumers. Universal knows that theaters will still be closed on April 10th, so unlike every other distributor who must simply delay their releases in that time period but still understand that theatrical release is essential to their business model, Universal on Trolls didn't make that decision. Exhibitors will not forget this. I understand why dude is getting a little salty and why he wants to protect theater owners. I mean, that's his job. He's the president of the association. But I'm not sure if Trolls World Tour is the cross you want to get nailed on. I mean, this thing already got released, and I said Taiwan earlier, and I apologize. It's Singapore and Malaysia, and it opened to $200,000, period. That's like a bomb. And so that's why they're doing this. That's why Universal's like, we got to get this out of there, because even if we wait to put it in the theaters when, oh, by the way, all these other movies are going to be hitting the theaters that are way better than this bomb, we got to get this out. I don't know why dude doesn't understand that. Okay, and here's the last question. Have studios otherwise assured theater owners that they won't break windows, including with delayed event picks, such as Disney's Mulan or Paramount's A Quiet Place 2, which have been delayed but yet don't have a new release date? Here's his answer. Yes, with the exception of Universal, every studio has gone overboard to reassure exhibitors that the theatrical model works for them and that they look forward to releasing their movies theatrically once the virus is done. And every one of those studios called their exhibition partners and talked through their plans for delayed release before they announced them. Only Universal on Trolls undermined the theatrical model. And Universal told no exhibitor about their plans on Trolls until approximately 20 minutes before their announcement. Exhibitors know who their partners are, and every other studio has demonstrated true partnership and belief in the theatrical model during this time of crisis for all Americans, and indeed all moviegoers around the world. I don't know John Fithian. I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm certainly not in a position to tell him how to do his job. I just hope he has seen Trolls World Tour, because from all indications from the people in Singapore, who are probably pretty sophisticated moviegoers because they open a lot of movies there, it sucks. And so he should understand that why he wants to pick a fight with Universal Pictures, Universal Studios, over a piece of garbage, I have no idea. Because movies are going to go to television as long as this crisis lasts. And furthermore, although I know some filmmakers want their movies to be seen on the big screen, they look great on the big screen, television sets are getting huge. So whether John Fithian understands this or not, he better get ready for movie makers. Because Martin Scorsese already showed you that they're going to be making movies to go on television sets, not in the movie theater. The movie theater is going to be for the event movie, in my opinion. That's what we're getting set up for. This just accelerated it. And so for him to want to chew out Universal really blows me, especially for a piece of garbage or apparent piece of garbage like Trolls World Tour. So while Fithian was busy whining to the Hollywood Reporter about how great Paramount and other studios were being to him and how screwed up Universal is, this was being broken by Deadline. I'm getting this from Collider, though, and it was also in Variety, and it was also, oh, by the way, in the Hollywood Reporter. Netflix is nearing a deal to acquire the Kumail Nanjiani and Issa Rae comedy, The Lovebirds, from Paramount and Media Rights Capital. Michael Showalter directed the film, which was supposed to hit the theaters April 3rd, following its world premiere at South by Southwest, which obviously did not happen. Rather than release The Lovebirds in theaters at a later date, Paramount decided to sell the film off to Netflix, which has seen its numbers spike as people around the world quarantine themselves inside their homes. My point is that we have seen the future, and it is streaming. And I understand this guy, 50th or 5th's job is to protect theater owners. Taking it out on the studios is not the way to go. They want to make their money back, and they're going to make it back any way they can. So, especially if the property sucks, like Trolls World Tour apparently looks like it is, because animated openings have to open big. If they don't open big, they're not going to get any bigger. There is no word of mouth delayed effect like Blair Witch Project, Usual Suspects type of thing with cartoons. Either the kids go see them or they don't want to go see them, and that's the way it is. So for small to mid-sized movies, keep your eye out on what streaming services are going to pick them up, because that's how you're going to have to see them. Larger movies like the James Bond movie and others are going to wait until the movies reopen. I will not be surprised if A Quiet Place 2 ends up in streaming. Next, we're going to see what cable and streaming shows are scheduled to begin in the first half of April. I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Yes, y'all. I am back. This segment, we are going to talk about shows that are going to be or scheduled to premiere this next month, in the first part of the month. And as I'm say many times, and I'll continue to say on this show, there are so many shows out there, there's no way I can cover them all. However, this is a pretty varied choice of what's going to, at least of what I could find, that's scheduled to premiere, whether it's a new show or a new season of an established show, between April 1st and April 15th. So I'm going to start with Thursday, April 2nd, and we have a lot of shows that are scheduled for that to premiere that day. The first one is Man with a Plan on CBS. It's going to be at 8:30. Now, these times are going to be Eastern Standard Times. It's the third season of the Matt LeBlanc comedy. God bless Matt LeBlanc. He just doesn't go away. This is I'm going to give you a little synopsis of what each of these series is supposed to be about. I have never watched Man with a Plan. It says, when his wife Andy returns to work, old school father Adam Burns takes on more of the responsibilities of parenting his three rambunctious children, Kate, Emmy, and Teddy. Adam must learn to balance this challenge with running a contracting business with his brother Don, while at the same time dealing with his overbearing father Joe. The series is set in suburban Pittsburgh. Sounds hilarious. Siren, that's a show that's on Freeform. That's going to be at 9 p.m. in the second season. It says here that it takes place in the coastal town of Bristol Cove, Washington, known for its legend of once being home to mermaids. I'm not reading any more of that. Broke starts at 9:30. It's a new show. It's the first season. The premise is, after his wealthy father decides to cut off his son, both son and wife move in with the wife's very reluctant and estranged sister, a working single mother with a son of her own. That would probably be good if it was like a thriller or murder mystery, but I think it's a comedy. We'll see. How to Get Away with Murder starts at night again. It's its 6th season on ABC at 10 p.m. Viola Davis, starring as Annalise Keating. She's a law professor at a prestigious Philadelphia University, unnamed, which should be the University of Pennsylvania. Oh, could be Villanova. Who knows? With 5 of her students, she becomes entwined in a murder plot. Murder, she wrote. Friday, April 3rd. Home Before Dark is an Apple TV show. It's the first season of a mystery drama show. Home Before Dark is supposed to follow a young girl who moves from Brooklyn to the small lakeside town her father left behind. While there, her dogged pursuit of the truth leads her to unearth a cold case that everyone in town, including her father, tries hard to bury. Also on Friday, April 3rd, Harley Quinn, a DC Universe show, which is actually very good. It's an animated feature. It's a series that follows Harley Quinn's adventures as she breaks up with the Joker, and she's receiving help from Poison Ivy, Clayface, Dr. Psycho, King Shark, and Cy Borgman in her plan to become a member of the Legion of Doom. Tales from the Loop, it's a new show that's on Amazon, explores the town and people who live in the Loop, a machine built to unlock and explore the mysteries of the universe, making things possible that were previously relegated to only science fiction. On Saturday, April 4th, DuckTales once again starts, and that's the reboot of the old 90s series. It's on its 3rd season of the reboot, so that's pretty good. Sunday, April 5th, World on Fire on PBS starts at 9 p.m. That's a first season of that drama. This series follows the hidden lives of ordinary people from Britain, Poland, France, and Germany, and the USA during World War II. The drama switches its scenes in between various locations from France, Britain, Germany, and Poland, and it features repeated visits to Paris, Warsaw, Manchester, Berlin, and Dunkirk. Okay, Tuesday, April 7th at 10:30 on TBS, The Last OG with my boy Tracy Morgan and Jordan Peele. Okay, that's enough. Okay. All right, that's enough. Trey is an ex-con who was released from prison for good behavior after serving 15 years. He returns to his old Brooklyn neighborhood to find that it's become gentrified and yada, 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 hijinks. Wednesday, April 8th, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? That's a reboot with Jimmy Kimmel as the host. That's easy money for Jimmy Kimmel. Sunday, April 12th, historical drama miniseries starts called Belgravia. I'm not talking about that. Insecure starts its 3rd season on HBO with Issa Rae. It's partially based on her acclaimed web series, Awkward Black Girl. Walking Dead, The World Beyond starts its 1st season of the 2nd spinoff from The Walking Dead. And the second spinoff was Fear the Walking Dead, as those of you who are Walking Dead heads know. Now, this is the premise of this one. The series, set in Nebraska 10 years after the apocalypse, features 2 young female protagonists and focus on the first generation to come of age in the apocalypse as we know it. Some will become heroes, some will become villains. In the end, all of them will be changed forever, grown up and cemented in their identities, both good and bad. Run, first season of a comedy series. Ruby Richardson walks away from her ordinary life in the suburbs to revisit her past with her college boyfriend, Billy Johnson. The two made a 17-year pact earlier, or a pact 17 years earlier, if either one of them texted the word run and the other replied with the same message, they would drop everything and they would meet in Grand Central Station and travel across America together. Why in the world would you do that? Okay, it's not that funny. Why would you do that? Again, whoever's pitching these concepts and getting them greenlit is excellent. So when I finish my treatment, please email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com. Tell me who you are. We'll work out the deal, and I'll get my stuff on TV. Okay, and let me go back to when I missed for Monday, April 6th. It's called The Baker and the Beauty. It's on ABC. It's a new series that's going to come on at 10 p.m. This is the synopsis. Set in Miami, Florida, this series follows Daniel Garcia, who works in his family's bakery and does everything that his loving Cuban parents and siblings expect him to do. But on a wild Miami night after breaking up with his girlfriend, he meets Noah Hamilton, an international superstar and fashion mogul, and his life moves into the spotlight as the pair discovers a mutual attraction toward each other. Okay, call me jaded, which I probably am. I love television, that's why I'm doing this podcast, but I do not like just revamped, reworked stuff. I like originality. Just new stuff. Give me new stuff. As ridiculous and comical as the last OG is, no one's really made a movie about an ex-con who comes back to a gentrified neighborhood. That treatment, that setup is original. This right here, while I am all for representation, and this sounds like it's a Latino cast, I'm not familiar with it, but Daniel Garcia takes place in South Florida. It sounds like it is. I'm all for that. But this is just reverse Green Acres, it sounds like. You have a guy from a humble background. How more humble can you get to be a baker's son who meets this fantastic, person who is international superstar and fashion mogul? She's probably like an Instagram influencer. So this is where you have this chemistry and lifestyle clash, just like Green Acres and Zsa Zsa Gabor. Or I guess that was Ava Gabor. I think they were the same person. But anyway, that's it. That's what I have on my list. I hope you can find something there to watch. Now, I'll make a prediction that I'm going to come on here in like 3 weeks and just be loving The Baker and the Beauty. And I will just be giving updates every week about The Baker and the Beauty because it's just such a great show after I just tried to clown it there. That's just my luck. But anyway, when we come back, we will be talking about how make-believe TV doctors and nurses are helping out for real with the coronavirus and supplies. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening. Don't go away.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Okay, we are back. And, in the midst of these hard times, not all the news is bad. In fact, Hollywood is reaching out, trying to help as much as they can. They have a lot of spare time since a lot of these productions have shut down. So medical dramas such as Fox's The Resident and NBC's New Amsterdam, ABC's The Good Doctor and Grey's Anatomy, and apparently Grey's Anatomy has a spin-off show called Station 19. They decided to donate their surplus medical supplies that they use for props on their sets to real hospitals that are running low on supplies. Here's a quote from The Hollywood Reporter. At Station 19, we were lucky enough to have about 300 of the coveted N95 masks, which we donated to our local fire station. They were tremendously grateful. The show's executive producer, Krista Vernoff, who works on Grey's Anatomy, told The Hollywood Reporter. So this was really good. I guess I should have known that in order to be as realistic as possible, they would use real medical supplies, not decoys. But apparently, or facsimiles or whatever you want to call them, but apparently they use the real deal there. So I'm glad they're not just sitting around. When Station 19 heard that the city of Ontario, California, fire department was out of masks and recycled the ones they had, the show decided to donate its stock in addition to giving masks to the Station 35 firehouse in Los Angeles' Los Feliz neighborhood. Grey's Anatomy donated backstock gowns and gloves from its costume department, which it gave to local LA hospitals. Well, good that they are real and not just costumes. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, the residents, creators, and producers donated supplies to the nearby Grady Memorial Hospital. I've been there. Showrunner Amy Holden Jones coordinated the efforts. Once she was told by the co-creators of the show and the medical advisor for the show. So that's rather heartwarming. I'm going to give them all a round of applause for doing that. I never really, like I said, thought that that stuff was the real deal. But since we know that it is, it's good to see that people aren't going to let that stuff sit around and they can put it to good use. Because unfortunately, all of our hospitals all across the nation are running low on those types of supplies. I had mentioned before about the number of television productions that are coming out of Canada. And apparently The Good Doctor is based in Vancouver. I don't watch the show. I don't know if it's supposed to take place in Vancouver or not, but that's certainly where it's filmed. And they sent the local Canadian government, because, they have socialized medicine there, their supplies. So it's good that across the board, some of these medical dramas are realizing that there are better uses for these masks than costuming, because they're not using them right now anyway. So this is a good time to put this out there. I wanted to ask you all to email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com and let me know about Grey's Anatomy. You all know that I've said you can't watch everything, and there are a lot of shows that have been quite popular, that are quite popular, that I just have not watched, have not had time to watch. Can't watch them all, and Grey's Anatomy is one. But I know there's several people out there who watch Grey's, and I want you to please email me. And if you want me to talk about it, if you want to tell me about it, I would love that. If any of you would like to call into the show and talk to me about Grey's Anatomy, I'd love that too. I can certainly do that. I have the ability to do that much better than the call that we had a few weeks ago. I've got some new equipment ready to go. So again, email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com and we can put that together. And again, speaking of Grey's Anatomy, there's some breaking news. Just got an email about ratings here. ABC's Station 19 delivered a series high 7.5 million viewers, along with a 1.3 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic, which is the big money demographic. Grey's Anatomy followed with 7.1 million viewers, and that's the biggest total audience in a year. It tied its season high in the demographic at 1.5, which is, that's higher than the Station 19, which had more viewers, but Grey's Anatomy got the money viewers, and that's good. At NBC, Superstore jumped 50% in audience in its adult audience, 18 to 49, which I guess is great news for Superstore. It says it's the best same-day numbers since May and March of 2019. So that's almost a year if you're going to go to March of 2019. Now, I'm glad, for the people, good for you if that Superstore is winning. But I don't know, man. It's kind of depressing that your numbers have to jump when people are locked in their houses and they have nothing else to do but watch television. And, well, they are opting to watch television instead of reading. So, but I guess you got a lot to choose from. So if you chose Superstore, that means they're winning. So good for them. Brooklyn Nine-Nine tied its demo high for the season. And it had its most watched episode since February of 2019. So that was their high in a year. So good for Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Those are two, again, here I go, but those are two shows that I just have not watched. Superstore and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Brooklyn Nine-Nine won a Golden Globe, if I'm not mistaken, a couple years back. I've heard some good things. I just don't have the time to watch them. And I don't think that I'm their demographic anyway. I read. What about Superstore? What about their props? Do they really film that in a Superstore? Do they own that stuff? I wonder if they do. Nah, probably not. But if they did, then they could donate that whole store.
Yes.
Just like Grey's Anatomy and Station 19 and The Good Doctor and the Resident are giving their scrubs up. Don't you think? I need to get on that. I wonder let me think what other shows could donate stuff. I don't think those zombie shows would have anything to offer. Would they? Well, they could, survival skills, I guess. But not products. We need products. We need prop products. I don't know if there's a show that has a lot of hand sanitizer. That's what we really need. We need like the Purell show.
Yes.
Where we could just get bunches, they could donate bunches of like hand sanitizer. Well, speaking of those hospital dramas, Daniel Day Kim announced on Instagram that he's tested positive for coronavirus, opening up about his journey to diagnosis and pleading for the public to follow self-isolation guidelines. The actor, who is now in Hawaii and was there when he obtained his test, was in New York the past few weeks, shooting the NBC series New Amsterdam. He says that he didn't really get symptoms for several weeks. So he says it's very important that we do self-quarantine or at least socially separate and get tests when you can because they're worth it. So I just thought I'd bring that up since that brought it home with the medical dramas. And finally, just to end on another high note, the Cannes Film Festival, which I've been saying I knew was probably going to be canceled. Well, it hasn't been totally canceled, but they have moved it back to June or July, it said. And Spike Lee, who is been selected as the first black president of the festival's jury committee, he said that he agrees 100% with Terry, who is the president of the Cannes Film Festival. Lee said in an interview with Variety that shortly after the announcement, he said that the world has changed and it's changing every day. People are dying, and France's president has said several times, I'm paraphrasing, we are at war. We are in a warlike time. And so with that, I will end this segment on coronavirus. But it's good to see that some productions have started to help out as much as they possibly can, and that Cannes is taking steps to not go on. I was concerned that they were going to continue just to have it in spite of everything else, but they've decided to shut it down for now, and that's good. Next, I am going to be telling you why I believe that Devs, D-E-V-S, on Hulu is a show you should be watching right now. We'll be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the backdoors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Okay, all right, we are back, and I am here to talk about a show that I've just started watching on Hulu, and I really enjoy it. In one of these episodes of this new show that I've been watching, this character says, I'm not sure you even understand what we're really doing here. And the character that says that's name is Katie. She's a quantum physicist. And she's in a new science fiction thriller show called Devs. Katie is played by Allison Pill. And she says that when she's addressing her coworkers on the project called Devs, that's where they get the title of the show, The new technology allegedly is so revolutionary and so powerful that her boss, Forrest, who's played by Nick Offerman, is willing to have bad things happen to people to protect it. Let me put it that way. Let me say right now that this is not going to have spoilers. I'm going to try to make this spoiler free. I am going to describe a little bit about the plot and a little bit about the characters. And so in that respect, it might have a little bit of a spoiler in it, but I don't think you'll listen to this review and it'll ruin your viewing experience. But I want to get that disclaimer out there. Katie, Allison Pill, she's worried that none of her colleagues fully grasp the nature or the implications of what their shiny new toy does, this new technology. But the funny thing is she could just as easily be looking out at the audience while she's saying that. Because it's not just that it's tough to figure out exactly what Devs does. It's not always easy to figure out what Devs the show is doing or why. But it's because Devs was created by Alex Garland. And Alex Garland, he's the guy who was behind Ex Machina and Annihilation, 2 movies that I thought were excellent. And he writes and directs every episode in Devs the show. The confounding nature of the show and its very weird and unholy machine can often feel like if we did understand what was going on, the show wouldn't be worth watching. And even when it's a headache to follow, the sheer form of this thing, the sheer form of the show is so dazzling, so hypnotic, that the plot can almost seem besides the point. Now, Alan Steppenwall of Rolling Stone, in his review, which he entitled Where Tech and Terror Collide, he compares this show to another show that is produced by FX. He calls it a style over substance superhero drama, but the show is Legion, and I watched Legion, and I enjoyed Legion, but I would agree with what Alan Steppenwall says. I enjoyed it, although I have to confess, if you asked me what Legion was about, all I could tell you is probably Marvel Mutants. And then I'd tell you something like, you have to see for yourself. Because that show, as confounding as it was just a joy to watch. One character describes the events that Forrest, that's the Nick Offerman character, sets into motion as transcendently weird. And that's about the size of Devs as a whole. I mean, it's transcendently weird, but it's also a really enjoyable show to watch. But it's also the kind of show whose cinematography and artistry is so self-assured that they wipe away much of the confusion, and they replace it with a bone-chilling nightmare. Now, Amaya is the name of the company at the center of the story, and it takes place in the Silicon Valley area. The campus, it's a big campus like most of these Silicon Valley tech multi-billion-dollar companies are. The campus is a visual marvel. And it starts with a most prominent figure, and that's this unnervingly lifelike statue of its namesake, which Amaya is the late daughter of Nick Offerman, which isn't a spoiler. You find this out within minutes of the beginning of the story. But this statue is so huge. This thing is in like the California, it's in Silicon Valley, out in where there's trees. This thing is head and shoulders above the trees so that its head is over the treetops, and it kind of overlooks the whole thing. It's visible from miles around. When they show the area drone shots coming in to approach the campus, it looks like a giant baby is invading the campus. Now, anyone who knows me would know they had me at this shot, period, because this is like a mammoth version of the synthetic baby that's in the Apple TV series Servant. It's creepy as hell, and so you got me there because I think it just creeped me out. And they always show shots of this thing day and night. It's really bizarre. If you pan the cameras down a little further, you see that many of the trees have been turned into huge fluorescent lamps. They kind of resemble psychedelic mushrooms. The Devs building itself is flanked by gold obelisks, and it looks like, say, Stanley Kubrick hired the production designers for the show because it looks like a mix between A Clockwork Orange and 2001. It's fantastic. The chief feature inside the building, of the Devs building that is a floating gold cube, and it's held aloft by magnetic fields. It's a beautiful room, but it's very, this thing is floating on magnetic fields. It's very precarious, so that every scene that they shoot in there, it's laced with this undercurrent of dread that it all could come crashing down at any moment. It's just unreal. But it's the acting in this series, which, if you've been listening to me, you know I love acting above all else. That is the perfect complement to all this production design, to all this great direction, and a fantastic script. There is something riveting and unsettling about the confident stillness of both Nick Offerman and Allison Pill. Nick Offerman is probably most famous for using that gif, that deadpan, as Ron Swanson on Parks and Recreation. He is a fantastic, sarcastic, straight man. And that's how I know Nick Offerman. But that effect proves just as potent in drama as it did in comedy. His hair and his beard is kind of shaggier than normal. It's long. He seems every bit the master of the universe type who prompts one of the characters in the show to say, I think you need to stop thinking of them as a tech company and see them as a mob. He's kind of scary and ominous without trying to be that way. And that's pretty good talent. It's really good. Allison Pill, meanwhile, is pulling double duty this spring. She's working on Devs, and also she's working on the Star Trek Picard show that's on the CBS All Access streaming channel. In both cases, though, she plays geniuses. She plays smart people. But the characters seem nothing alike beyond the fact that they're both intelligent. And Pill has a very expressive face. My cousin and I used to joke about the size of Allison Pill's head when she starred in HBO's Newsroom. But that shows our ignorance, just how stupid we can be sometimes, because she has one of the most expressive faces on television. You know, Claire Danes actually has the most expressive face on television. But on Homeland, her face is usually twisted up like a Cinnabon in some look of between frustration and tears. I think when she came in to read, they just said, give us your worst face. And then they were like, oh, you got the part. Carrie Matheson, you got it. But I digress. Forrest, that's the Nick Offerman character. He's the one with the money and the power. And his security chief, Kenton, played by Zach Greiner, he's really good. He's the guy who knows the creative ways to do a lot of dirty work. But in many ways, Katie, Allison Pill, is the scariest of the trio because she unblinkingly believes in whatever the hell it is they're doing, which I don't know. But she is a true believer. And like I said, her face, she knows how to put on a very blank, expressive face. And I know that sounds like contradictory, but she's doing a great job. And that's about all I'm going to say about Devs for now, because like I said, I don't want to give out any spoilers. I haven't even seen the whole series. I've only seen the first 4 episodes. Episode 5 comes out this Thursday. I recommend, if you have Hulu, or if you have access to Hulu, if you have your friends log in, you should log in and you should watch it. I'm giving Devs on my 5-level food scale 4.5 deluxe pizzas with banana peppers out of 5, and that's high praise. Tell me what you think. Email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com or tweet me at FletchDC. And I'd love to hear about it. I'll read your emails on the air if you send me one about Devs. Next, those of you who know me know what's coming. We're ending this episode with episode 2 of the 3rd season of Westworld on HBO. Don't go away. I'll be right back.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right, now we are at my favorite part of the show, where we talk about Westworld. We're in season 3, episode 2. It just, at the time I'm recording this the Monday morning after Episode 2 aired on HBO on Sunday night. And I have to tell you, I'm a little disappointed. I am worried that this show may have just jumped the dragon. Maybe not. We'll see. I've heard a lot of early reviews. Some people love it, as most things on Westworld. Some people don't like it, like I don't like it. But we will see. I'm just going to go give a little synopsis and then we'll cut to the chase. All right, in this episode, and for those of you who haven't listened before, there are going to be massive spoilers. Please don't listen to this if you want to watch episode 2 without knowing anything about it. And I'm going to assume if you're listening, you've seen it, so I'm going to try not to go blow by blow. But in this scene, it starts off, at the beginning of the show, Maeve wakes up in the loop we left her in Warworld, in the Nazi occupation of an Italian town. We see that she's reunited with Hector, or who she thinks is Hector. He is apparently still very much programmed. She is sentient, so she decides to just off herself. And she wakes up in the lab, where she usually wakes up after her motor functions stop working. And we see that Felix and Sylvester are still there, but they don't recognize her, which seems kind of odd. Felix is cleaning the brain pieces out of her bullet hole in Maeve's head. She tries to escape, and she's confronted by 2 security men who tell her to freeze all motor functions, but she acknowledges that that won't work on her. And, at that time, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, they should have fired down on her immediately, but they didn't. And she was about to get a drill and do the lobotomy thing that they do in Westworld with these hosts. And just then Lisa Sizemore comes in and stops her and saves the day. He explains that he barely escaped the massacre alive in season 2, and he had a plan to reunite her with her daughter, which involved putting her in Warworld, which is near the Forge. So that was explained. And the reason I said I didn't like this episode is because it reminded me of what Nolan and Joy promised was going to happen this season. And this is a very linear plot, even though there are some twists and some things that are kind of, you don't know exactly what's going on, but there's a lot of exposition. And I get it. They lost a lot of viewers last season, and they want to catch them up, and they don't want to make them have to work to get caught up. But a lot of this stuff seems like it should be there. It's almost like a Dick Wolf production, and they should have Ice-T in there, like filling in the blanks for all the people who can't figure out what's going on. So anyway, the 2 of them, they ride horses to the Forge. That's Sizemore and Maeve. They ride to the Forge, where she starts to realize that there's something wrong with this scene. And she has this conversation with Sizemore. She realizes he's a host because he tries to get his Mac on so that, and everybody that she thought should recognize her, like Felix and Sylvester, they didn't recognize her. So she figures out that she's in a simulation, and that it's a simulation that's trying to be Delos, but it's not Delos. And so she wants to get out. So it'd be at this point in a Dick Wolf production where Ice-T would say, so wait, you trying to tell me that all this time this thing been fake? Maeve been stuck in a machine? Yeah, Ice-T, that's what we're trying to tell you. So within minutes, Maeve is able to break the simulation by asking about the square root of -1. And it occupies the brains of the lab hosts who try to solve the problem, and it slows the computer down. Then Maeve wreaks havoc on Warworld, which basically caused the entire simulation to freeze. So you trying to tell me that this thing is as fragile as my Chromebook? Apparently so, Ice-T. She uses a Westworld tech tablet, an iPad, to communicate with a drone robot in the server room where her brain is plugged in. And so then the security team shoots down the drone robot that has stolen her brain, and that's the end of that scene. So you trying to tell me Maeve was just running with her brain with nowhere to go, with no plan? Apparently so. Then Maeve awakens in this white dress in bed, and she meets Sirach, who, as we guessed, is played by Vincent Cassel, looking as suave as Vincent Cassel always looks in the real world.
Greetings.
And he wants to recruit Maeve to kill Dolores. Now, Dolores, I think, is like the brain of the show. And so Maeve is like the heart of the show. She's like the good host. So Maeve doesn't like this idea about going to kill a host that she has no beef with. So she picks up a knife and is about to stab him, and he freezes her in mid-action. Because obviously dude is in control because he dressed her right. Yeah, I see, that's right. So we now have Serac, Bernard, and possibly Maeve going after Dolores, who in Bernard's words is out to destroy the human race. Meanwhile, Bernard returns to a charred Westworld, and he makes his way to Ford's house to find Stubbs there in a room of just frozen Bernard. So you trying to tell me that public enemy number 1 snuck back onto the largest android mass murder scene to date, and he did so in a rowboat in khakis? Yeah. So he runs up to Stubbs. Stubbs is motionless and holding a gun, and it looks like he tried to kill himself. Stubbs comes back to life and admits that he's a host, which is kind of obvious, and that Ford gave him the job of protecting all the other hosts. So Stubbs says to Bernard, "It was my job to protect every host in the park. And the last job the boss gave me was to cover your tracks and give you a fighting chance." Now, again, a little bit too much exposition for my bones, but that's what he said. Ford didn't write Stubbs a tragic backstory. He had a job to do, and when his job was over, he shot himself. Bernard helps heal Stubbs, and they team up for the rest of the episode looking for Maeve. So you trying to tell me that Stubbs is looking for Maeve so they can kill Dolores, who he allowed off the island in the first place because he was programmed to help her by Ford? That's what he's doing? Yeah. So Bernard thinks he's the only one capable of stopping Dolores, and Bernard also thinks that Dolores brought him back as a check to herself. Now, this is the part that I was starting to really get concerned. While Stubbs and Bernard are searching through the labs, we overhear 2 techs talking, and they're played by none other than D.B. Weiss and David Benioff, who are the creators and showrunners of Game of Thrones. And they play Dan the tech and Dave the tech respectively, and they have the following conversation. Dan says, "The buyer is a startup in Costa Rica." Dave says, "How the F are you going to get that to Costa Rica?" And Dan says, "In pieces, man." And Dan starts to saw something, and when they get cut to a wide shot, they reveal that it's a dragon host, and the dragon looks like Drogon. So you trying to tell me... Nah, hold up, I got this. I'm trying to tell you this was some stupid fan service that had no place in this show, ever. This was ridiculous. This used to be a highbrow sci-fi series, and now it's a mad, 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 mad world. Ridiculous. So while Bernard has to scan himself for answers. He got an iPad, the long story. But he's scanning himself, and Stubbs sees a court jester playing the Westworld theme on a lute. Again, too much like a cartoon. Stubbs mentions that Park 4 they're passing through is Medieval World, which seems like a reference to Future World, which was the sequel to the movie Westworld. But at the end of the episode, we see Bernard give Stubbs a new directive. Protect Bernard Lowe at all cost. Now, I like having these two as a team, but it was really ridiculous, some of the scenes here. I mean, Stubbs chases 6 guys down with submachine guns with an axe. And then Bernard and Stubbs just stroll out of the park after they just beat up some security guys and chase them away with an axe. And then they're going to make their escape on a rowboat after Bernard took the time to reprogram Stubbs. That's ridiculous. I just don't think I like this show without Dolores and Chips. So what do you think? Please email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com or tweet me at FletchDC. I'd like to go on longer, but that's all the time I have. I'd like to thank you all for listening to the GSMC television podcast, part of the mighty GSMC podcast network. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast. Rate us, please. Give me a 5-star rating. I'd really love that. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please look out for each other. Be safe. Be kind. Tune in next week. My name's Howard Fletcher. Thank you very much for listening. See you next time. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts podcast network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts podcast network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.